Let's bring in our senior Washington correspondent, Hallie Jackson. Hallie, we'll get to the debate in a minute, but let's talk about last night. Let's talk about the election results. Democrats got some surprises. Abortion access continues to be a potent issue for Democrats. The White House is, of course, celebrating these results. Should they be? What does this portend for Biden?
Says a couple of things here, Savannah, right? 2023 as it relates to 2024. First is this question had been out there. Can this issue of abortion access, even a year and a half after the overturning of Roe versus Wade, still animate people, still get voters out? The answer clearly seems to be yes, based on what we saw here. It was yes in 2022. There's reason to believe it's going to be yes come 2024, which is a good thing for Democrats. You talked about that sigh of relief, that kind of victory lap for President Biden here. Here's the one thing, Savannah. President Biden was not on the ballot, and there's not much here last night to indicate that voters have addressed what has always been the biggest issue for the president here, and that is the issue of his age. That's what we've heard consistently again and again in polls. So that's a question mark. You know who else wasn't on the ballot last night, Savannah? Donald Trump. And there again, you have this question of turnout. Will people who are very loyal, who enthusiastically back Donald Trump, show up in 2024? And will that make things look different? That's the question for the next year for us, Savannah.
Yeah, and the most recent polls are showing that Trump-Biden matchup. Trump is winning at the moment. Meanwhile, in other news, there are a bunch of Republican candidates who are trailing far, far, far behind Donald Trump, and they're going to debate tonight. I mean, can this move the needle, and what are we doing here?
So, I mean, the hope for these candidates is that it will, Savannah. Presumably that's why they're all showing up on stage, all five of them here in Miami tonight. You make the important point that Donald Trump is just crushing as it relates to the polling that we're seeing in some of these key early states, including in Iowa. But this is where you're going to see, and Craig referenced this, potentially a Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley matchup. Nikki Haley has surged in some of the recent polls we've seen. She is now there in second place, right alongside Ron DeSantis, based on our most recent numbers. Second place is not first, right? So there's this question of can they make up that 30-plus point gap, or roughly 30-point gap? That's a huge question mark, especially with Donald Trump not on stage. What I'm going to be looking for, will these candidates try to draw some critical distinctions between themselves and Donald Trump, particularly on an issue that will probably dominate tonight, and that is the Israel-Hamas war, the issue of foreign policy. Nikki Haley has foreign policy chops given her previous role as UN ambassador. Ron DeSantis, kind of uniquely positioned as the governor of a state that has a large Jewish population here. They've both gone after Donald Trump for his initial reaction after the war, so that's something else to watch. Of course, as you heard Craig say, he's not going to be on this stage. He's going to be holding his own event outside.
Another thing to watch, Hallie, don't you think, is this issue of abortion? And it's obviously been a killer for Republicans at the ballot box since the overturning of Roe v. Wade and the Dobbs decision. So now the question is how Republicans are going to try to frame this. Glenn Youngkin, the Republican in Virginia, who the governor, he wasn't on the ballot, but he was trying to win Republican legislature, said, OK, let's reframe this. It's not a ban. They're trying to kind of massage the issue. Where do you think that plays out, and how might that affect the primary?
Yeah, trying to frame it as this kind of middle ground there in Virginia, Savannah. But here's the thing, right? The messaging that Republicans have had so far on this issue of abortion access since June of 2022, when Roe was overturned, just hasn't worked when it comes to the ballot box, when it comes to people who are going out and voting. So the question is, does the messaging start to shift, right? Is there going to be a different messaging from Republicans as it relates to this issue of abortion access? Because clearly, I think we've seen enough data points now to say voters do care, and it is driving people out, even though it wasn't on the ballot specifically in some of these races last night. It was still a critical through line, Savannah. That actually is something else to maybe watch tonight. If this issue of abortion access comes up, what are you going to hear from some of these candidates hoping to get into the White House, hoping to beat Donald Trump for that Republican nomination? Are they going to start to message a little bit differently there?
And will the former president start messaging differently as well? We've seen hints of that already. Hallie, thank you so much. We will see you tonight. You're hosting the pre and post debate show on NBC News Now with Tom Yamas. That's going to be a good time, and you can watch the debate live starting 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 Pacific, here on NBC, NBC News Now, and Peacock.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't miss the Today Show every weekday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific on our streaming channel, Today All Day. To watch, head to today.com/allday or click the link right here.